Oh. Out of focus. Nope, focus over here. Oh my god, I'm still out of focus. This is decaf. I have been caffeine free. I actually have been really good about it for the last few weeks. I will say though, I'm exhausted all the time and I wake up with a lot of energy and then I get to like 10, 11 o'clock and I'm just absolutely dead. So I was like, I need to make some more decaf before filming this video. And there is still a little bit of caffeine in decaf, and it's crazy because my tolerance to caffeine is so low right now that even the tiniest bit of caffeine that's in the decaf gets me. Like, it gets me hyped. Maybe it's psychological, I don't really care, because either way, it feels good. Today's video is a Q&A. I've done Q&As on my Instagram before, but I haven't done a YouTube video Q&A. So I asked you guys to send me questions over Instagram, and I got a few good ones. I am doing this totally blind, like I didn't write a script or write out answers to these questions yet, so we're just gonna see how it goes. So the first question I got was, how long did your recovery process take until you could call yourself fully recovered? This is an interesting question because one, I think it varies from person to person, and it's hard to say when there was like a point where I felt fully recovered. I've said this before, my mentor Kara Crinsafeli, she always says recovery's not a line, it's a motherfucking scribble, and that is so true. I had moments where I thought I was fully recovered and then something would trigger me, like a stressful situation or a comment somebody made, or it really just depended, but it would take me by surprise because I would think I was in such a solid place. And I think we need to have a lot of compassion for ourselves through the recovery process because it's hard to know when we are fully recovered, and if that even exists. That's an argument. A point of discussion, at least within the recovery community, is like, are you ever really fully recovered? And I no longer identify as somebody who has an eating disorder, but I would say there's a voice in my head around food and body image that is always there, that people who've never had an eating disorder just don't have. And I think that voice will always be there for me, but I'm at a point where it's so quiet, and even if it does come up and it starts telling me things, I know how to handle it and I know what to say back to it. So I don't feel like I'm in recovery anymore at all because I have the tools and the knowledge to navigate anything related to disordered eating. It doesn't taste the same as normal coffee, but it's close enough. It does the job. Kind of. So this was a question about exercise. Somebody asked, how the fuck did you start again? I still associate most exercises, also the ones I like, with the eating disorder. It takes a long time. It's a process. And again, it varies from person to person. It depends, how long have you had an eating disorder for? How long has your relationship with exercise been in relation to your eating disorder? You can go watch my video on how to have a healthy relationship with exercise. I go into this in detail. But the biggest thing for me was taking a break completely. And then when I came back to it, every time I would exercise, if an eating disorder thought came up, if like, say I was running and the eating disorder voice in my head was like, oh yeah, good job, you're burning this many calories, or like you're earning your food later, I would just stop. I'd be like, nope, we're not doing this. Like, we're gonna go home. So I'd take myself home and I was trying to reinforce to my brain, like, hey, if you have these eating disorder thoughts, you can't exercise. So it was sort of this process of unlearning behaviors and unlearning this association with eating disorder and exercising together and making it about something else. Another thing I had to do was write down and figure out what my motivation for exercise truly was. So, you know, of course, in the eating disorder, it's all about manipulating your body. So when I got back into exercise, I tried to choose exercises that were gentle, you know, still health promoting, but not necessarily targeted towards weight loss. More, it was about like mental health and like feeling good. So I would do things like go on very leisurely walks. They weren't very long at first. And then things like gentle yoga. The next question was, do you sometimes eat something and realize later that you didn't really crave it? It gives me crazy food guilt. So at the beginning of recovery, I gave myself full permission to eat whatever, whenever I wanted, and it was either because I was craving it, I was hungry, or I just wanted it. It just sounded good. I wasn't necessarily hungry or craving it, but I had to teach my brain, hey, we're allowed to eat. There's no restriction, like, please trust me. So letting the brain and the body know that you can be trusted again. And so if you're eating something and you still are experiencing a lot of food guilt, really look at that mindset, because that's a form of restriction. That's emotional restriction. That's vitamin P restriction, P meaning pleasure. And if you're still restricting mentally and emotionally, you're not really intuitively eating, because we need to nourish ourselves in all these ways. Not only nourish ourselves physically, but make sure we get that emotional nourishment from food, because our brain really craves that. We're meant to be emotionally nourished from food. So if you eat something and you weren't really craving it, that's fine. Don't make any judgment about it. Look at the thoughts you're having around it and ask yourself, how am I judging this? And then know that that's the eating disorder side of your brain talking about food that way. So combat it with logical thoughts. Combat it with what you know to be true. So if you eat something, you weren't really craving it, and you start to feel guilty and you're having thoughts of like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that. I just wasted like extra calories, or like that's gonna make me fat and I like didn't even need it. Whatever the thoughts are, combat that with your logical voice. So say something like, I'm so glad I have full permission to eat whatever I want. Or, oh, okay, that craving didn't actually mean that I wanted that. I'm gonna learn from that and use that next time. So just use it as a learning experience, because the second we guilt and shame ourselves, we're just getting back into that destructive cycle that the eating disorder is in the first place. So you don't want to get back to that place. Eating something even though you didn't crave it says nothing about you as a person. Don't make it a moral thing. It's just a learning opportunity. And I hope at least that in that moment you're enjoying the food, because that's the most you can do. So enjoy that food, and if you realize you didn't really crave it, move on. Maybe you're still learning to listen to your hunger cues or your cravings or your biological cues. And there is going to be a period of time where you're like trying everything and going like, okay, does this cue mean that I want chips? Does this cue mean that I want an apple? Does this cue mean that I want vegetables? Does this cue mean that I want cake? Like it takes practice, and you'll start to learn like what cues are associated with what food, what craving, all of that. So again, just use it as a learning opportunity. Don't beat yourself up, because that only plays into the eating disorder. The next question was, how are you feeling at the moment? I'm feeling good. Yeah, I know a couple of videos ago I was talking about how my life was falling apart. If you watched it, I ended up talking about how I'm actually doing really well, and I'm using what's going on in my life as an opportunity to grow and step into the most authentic version of myself, and sort of rediscover who I am and reevaluate where I'm going in life. Life is actually really exciting right now. I'm meeting a lot of new amazing people, which is great, but then I'm also leaving for Hawaii in 3 months, so like I'm kind of sad, but it's been really fun, and I'm just focusing on coaching and having so much fun with my clients and the book club, and I'm living with my mom and my sister right now, and that's been amazing because I've been able to spend more time with them and reconnect with them. And yeah, I mean, I feel good. I feel like myself. I feel like my relationship with food is better than ever, and I'm doing well. Appreciate you asking. Okay, someone asked, should we eliminate all appearance-related compliments? That's a really good question. So I talk a lot about taking away the focus of appearance, and I really do think it's a huge problem. So if you're looking for validation on your appearance, or you feel like even though maybe you don't have an eating disorder necessarily, or a disordered relationship with food, or even your body image, but you're still really hyper focusing on appearance, I want you to ask yourself where that comes from. What are you making your appearance mean about you? Start to really question where that's coming from. I'm not here to say that it's inherently unhealthy. I have my own stances on it, but I do think focusing too much on appearance distracts us from what we actually care about in life, because I think a lot of time we equate appearance to worth and success and having good relationships, and I don't necessarily think it's appearance in and of itself that brings us those things. I think it's what we think it brings us. So it's like with thinness, for example. It's like, do you want to lose weight, or do you just want to feel accepted and loved and worthy and healthy, and do you want to feel okay in your body? Is it really the thinness, or is it those underlying things? And same with appearance. It's like, do you really want to be pretty, or do you want people to think highly of you and approach you and talk to you and think you're worth something? So really just question where it's coming from and question if it's distracting from something deeper. Is there, like, who do you want to be? How do you want to be perceived? And what type of people do you want to attract in your life? And is focusing on appearance distracting you from getting there? So I have this new background. It's like this trifold. If someone can tell me what it's called, it's like one of those like things you use to like change behind changing wall. I don't know. I feel so absolutely ignorant not knowing what that's called, but it's nice because I don't have to clean my room before filming. So I can just throw this baby up. It's chaos back there, but you guys don't know that until just now because I told you, but before you had no idea. The next question I got, this is a very important question, is if you had a pet squirrel, what would you name it? If I had a pet squirrel, I'm kind of afraid of squirrels. I think they're kind of gross. They just kind of remind me of hairy rats, and I have a strong bias against them because they were always living in our attic when I was growing up, and it was very frustrating. So I don't even think I would ever have a pet squirrel, and if I did, I'd probably name it something derogatory because, man, they really messed up our attic, you know? Like, I'm just not a fan of squirrels, so maybe I name it like Heathen or Ghoul or Gremlin, something representative of how squirrels have been for me in my life, so. Growing up though, funny story. One time my dad was laying in our backyard. I think he was just like reading or sunbathing or something, and a squirrel crawled up on his chest and just like stared at him in the face. And he said to the squirrel, "Hi, squirrel buddy." And ever since then, he called squirrels his squirrel buddy, which is ironic because he hated the squirrels that lived in our attic. I mean, seriously hated them. And it was his job to get rid of the squirrels, so he called them his buddies, but here he was hunting them down, trying to get them out of our attic, so. Another question I got was, would you like to work on coaching for the rest of your life, or do you have other plans for the future? You know, I think life throws curveballs at us constantly. You know, I'm not the person that I was 10 years ago, even 4 years ago. I'm a completely different person with completely different goals, and I love coaching, and I've never felt so passionate about anything in my life, and I was lost for a really long time not knowing what I wanted to do, and I found recovery coaching and immediately fell in love with it, and I can see myself doing it for a long time, but I am never going to set an expectation for myself that I always need to be coaching or that I am gonna do it for the rest of my life. If I do, that's great, but I also know if it's not coaching, it's gonna be something even better. Okay, the next question I got is, are eating disorders as bad as addiction? Or are they an addiction in and of themselves? So I don't think you can really compare the badness of eating disorders versus addiction because I think they're two separate things that people suffer from. Eating disorders are they have the second highest mortality rate of any mental illness other than opioid addiction. So as far as mortality rate, they're right up there with substance addiction. But are they as bad? I think it's all contextual. I think you wouldn't want addiction or an eating disorder. And is an eating disorder an addiction? I don't necessarily think it's an addiction per se, but a lot of times it's used as a coping mechanism. Eating disorders, I often call them life rafts because we turn to an eating disorder a lot of time if something is going on in our life and we want to feel in control of something. So I know for me, I fell into an eating disorder because I was wildly insecure. I felt like I didn't know where I was going. I had no form of self-worth, and I put all of my focus and energy into an eating disorder to just make me feel like I was grounded, which sounds weird because during my eating disorder, that was when I was the least grounded in my life, but I had the false sense of being grounded. And look, I'm not an addiction expert, but I think a similar thing happens in addiction where we fall into an addiction in order to cope with something going on in our life. So in that way, they're similar. And again, I don't think one is worse or better than the other. Okay, another question I got is, when and why are you moving to Hawaii? I am moving to Hawaii in early January, and I'm going there to work on a farm. I'm going through the woofing program, and I'm gonna work on a farm where I get to learn how to grow fruits and vegetables and take care of animals and learn how to ferment foods. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I someday want to have my own property where I'm living a self-sustained lifestyle, growing my own food, you know, taking care of my own animals, and maybe being off the grid potentially, but just being able to rely on myself and create as little pollution as possible. I don't know if I'll stay there long term. I don't think more people need to go to Hawaii. It's already kind of becoming overpopulated and white people have definitely taken it over. So morally, I don't know if I feel good about staying there long term, but I never know. I never have really any expectation. I just want to go there and feel it out and see what happens, and maybe it'll be the place I spend the rest of my life. Maybe it'll just be a 3-month gig where I learn a lot and then get to bring that knowledge to the mainland, and that would be fine by me. And somebody else asked, what is your favorite part about being a coach? My favorite part about being a coach is just being able to connect with people. And a lot of people that I work with, most people that I work with, will come to me with problems with food and body image, and they'll tell me all these struggles that they're going through. And usually on the first call, I'll ask them like everything they struggle with and what they want help with. And I always tell them, like, you are not the first person that has told me that they struggle with literally these exact things. Of course, everybody's circumstance and situation is different and unique, but the overarching themes and the scenarios that people struggle with are very similar. And just being able to tell somebody like, hey, you're not alone, like you're not crazy, and it's not your fault that you're going through this. I love being able to be that person for somebody else and be able to tell them like there is hope for you and you can get through this and there's a way better life waiting for you. And I cry on calls with clients all the time. I just get to connect deeply with them, and that's all I've ever wanted from a job, is just to be able to like connect with people one-on-one and be able to improve their lives. And I feel like I'm doing exactly that. So I'm fulfilled and I feel so lucky to be doing this work. Somebody else asked me, what is your favorite food? That's so hard to answer. I don't know if you mean cuisine or meal or snack or what, but I would say my favorite cuisine is Mexican food, 100%. Oh, you know what? Actually, maybe that's not true. I also love Greek food and I love Hawaiian food. Surprise, surprise. My camera's actually sitting on top of a Hawaiian cookbook right now instead of my tripod. So yeah, I would say Hawaiian, Greek, and Mexican food are all my favorite cuisines. As far as dishes go, man, I also really like Indian food. I was just thinking of the dishes I like, and they're all Indian dishes. Like I love curry, I love naan bread and hummus. I love burritos, of course. So I don't know, it's hard for me to pick one. So I know I promised to make a recipe video on that Hawaiian bowl thing that I had in my last video, but you guys, I've been cooking it so much, I seriously just need a break. So I'm gonna do it in next week's video, or maybe the week after that. How about I'll say it'll come in the next month, but I just need a break from eating it. I've been eating it so much that I need to just step away for a second. Okay, well that was all the questions I have. I appreciate everyone sending in their questions. I had a lot of fun answering them. And if you have any more questions, just comment them down below and DM me on Instagram. And I always love when you guys reach out and ask me questions. And if you need help, like, I'm here for you, reach out. You can reach me either through email at annawegnercoaching@gmail.com or my Instagram at thinkoutside-the-bod. And I'm in the middle of redoing my website. I had a website up and I just completely tore it down and I'm restarting. So I'll have that up soon, and that'll have other ways to contact me, ways to apply for a discovery call. But for now, if you are interested in coaching, you can just send me a DM or an email. If you have any video requests, let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and I will see you in next week's video.